Okay, so let's get started. This session is all about marketing your work. So I am just going to start. I'm just going to start with this broad question. What should everyone be making available to people, in particular in a digital format? This might be new for some folks. It might be something that you already know, but we'll just start at the very beginning. So a few things that you can think about is just having this ready to provide at the drop of a hat. I know that if you don't have these things already, if you haven't updated them in a while, it can be really time consuming. But I think that the time you put in is really worth it, because then when someone comes around asking, I know I do this a lot with the artists that we work with at Cash, is I am constantly looking for the following items: for a professional headshot, if you've got one, any high quality images of your work if you're a visual artist, videos or audio files if you're a performing artist, any content that you specifically created that could be shared on social media. And sometimes, well, I broke that out because sometimes the intention isn't necessarily to share everything on social media, even though social media is important. But sometimes if we're sending a press release, and I want to make sure that the Democrat Gazette or someone has the assets that they need so that they can post about, or I'm sorry, share or write about whatever it is that that we're working on, that they have what they need. So these two items could be, or two bullet points could be different, but they don't necessarily have to be. And then in addition to a headshot, high quality images, videos, audio files, the following information. So your full name, if you use a different name for your practice, that, and the pronunciation that comes along with that. Your pronouns are important, your contact information. If you prefer to be contacted via Instagram, DM, or email, or whatever that might be. And then a website, if it's applicable. If you have an artist statement or a bio, links to all of your social media so that you can be tagged. And in particular, the accounts that you're using in a professional manner. If you have an artist account, and you have like a personal account that you don't want people to share, make sure that you give us the right one. Links to relevant articles, media mentions that you would be comfortable with us pulling from. Sometimes other newspapers or blogs or whatever will write something that's really helpful for communications teams in particular to pull quotes from. If they said that your work was the most amazing thing that they'd ever seen, and that was from a newspaper in Denver or something, and we want to promote you here in Northwest Arkansas, I'm just making things up, it's really important. That would be really important for us, because then we could say, like, the blah 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 newspaper in Denver said that this was the most amazing thing they'd ever seen, so obviously you need to come see it at our location here in Bentonville, or whatever that might be. Same thing with descriptions of your work, just so that we can make sure that we are describing everything that you have to offer, everything that people are going to see or going to experience in the way that you feel comfortable with. Same thing with language parameters. If you have specific terms that you really hate, we want to know that so we can make sure not to use them. An example of this, I think, as when I was working at Crystal Bridges last summer, we had an exhibition that was all self-taught artists. I don't know if any of you got to see it. It was called What I Know. And the curatorial team and I spent months going back and forth about whether we wanted to use the term self-taught, whether we wanted to use the term, there's another term that now I'm blanking, in like, I think there are several terms. Outsider artist, that's the one I was trying to think of. And what would be the most appropriate? And eventually it came back that an artist wanted to be described a certain way. So we said, oh, perfect. Let's just go with that then. So these are things that, you know, other folks, in particular people working in communication, spend a ton of time thinking about. And so it's really helpful if you are picky or you are particular about the way that your work is described, that you provide that from the start. And then the same thing with rights. So if you have permission, if we need permission, or if you have already obtained permission, but it needs to be credited a certain way, you want to be credited a certain way, that's also really helpful to note. Just so that we, again, right off the bat, have that information and can get to work. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move forward? I can't see the chat, but before I move forward, I want to make sure that like all of that's gelling for people.
I'm watching the chat. Yeah, any questions? Can you put a 1 in the chat if you have a press kit, and a 2 in the chat if you wouldn't call it that, but you have some kind of combination of some of these items, and 3 if you're like, haven't thought about putting something like this together. Kind of want to gauge where we're at. Again, put a 1 in the chat if you've got a press kit. Number 2 in the chat if you're like, I have some stuff ready to send to media and to people that I'm trying to get gigs with or partner with. And 3 if you've never thought about it. Okay, thanks everybody. And I have a quick question for you, Brittany. This press kit, is the purpose of it to have it on deck, kind of like a CV? So like you don't know what kind of jobs could come up, but you constantly are building up your CV so that when the time comes that you need to build up a resume specific to a job, you're ready? Is that
Exactly,
okay?
exactly. That's a great way to think about it. It also, I think that unless you are still experimenting with your medium, still experimenting with what you want to be called, you know, unless you are anticipating a major change in your practice or in your personal life or whatever it might be, I think a lot of this content is what I would call evergreen, meaning that you update it once and it will be good to go for a really long time. You won't have to, the only thing that you might have to constantly update are those links to relevant articles, media mentions, places that your work has been exhibited, etc., because that will, you know, be changing as time goes, as you exhibit more places, perform more places, etc. So that is something that will need constant attention. But a lot of this, you know, you take a headshot, unless you change your hair color and decide that my hair is going to be blue until the end of time or whatever, um, you should be fine. So there is a lot of like upfront work, but once you've got it done, you should be good to go. Jeffrey, I'm going to I can share some examples of things that I have really liked. We don't have, at least not to my knowledge, a true cache branded, cache approved template, at least not that I'm aware of. Okay. So the reason that I start here is because I think it's really important to note that all of these things as a unit can be plugged and chugged in a myriad of different places. Once you've got them set, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds is, do I need a website? I think that websites are probably a really easy place to drop a lot of information and keep going, especially if you do have a clear, concise, easy to navigate template or website. A couple of resources for building a website if you don't have one already. Squarespace and Wix make templates that you can easily customize without having to know any sort of coding or web building skills. Squarespace and Wix will also, you pay for your domain. It's included in the whole experience of using their sites. If you use someone else, then you might want to, that doesn't do that, you might want to consider purchasing your domain. You can do that through GoDaddy, which also has a web template service, a website development service, same as Squarespace and Wix. But I put that in there because if you don't use any of if you don't use the two, what I would call the two big ones, you will want to follow up with GoDaddy and get your domain name. WordPress is another one that's really popular. I find WordPress to be really difficult if you are not someone who has a lot of design, UX, UI sort of design skills. It's really, really customizable, but part of that customization means you have to know what you're doing. So for my own purposes, I have mostly stuck with Squarespace, just because I like their templates, but Wix is also great. I wanted to provide a couple of examples of websites that I really like in particular. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, if anyone's familiar with Sarah Kane. She had an exhibition. I worked on her exhibition when I worked at the Momentary, and I found her website to be really very like clean, very easy to navigate. So in this top section, and I'm gonna see if too fast. I think you can see my cursor moving. The navigation bar is literally a link. The first thing is a link to her Instagram. The next is her CV, which I pulled a chunk of from here. Her CV is her exhibited work, a combination of the places where she's exhibited, the things that have been written about her, videos that have been created of her work. It's kind of like a dumping ground for anything that has to do anything with her. So she's got this article from the New York Times. She was in a podcast. This is a video tour of the exhibition at the Momentary. I felt like that was a really good sort of example of how you can just start, like, you can just kind of dump things into your quote unquote CV. She didn't have, this is the very start. She didn't have anything like, I was born here, or like I reside here, or anything like that. It literally was just kind of like, here's my work. Here's how you can experience my work. Galleries are her gallery representation and the links to their website and how you can get in touch with them. The words were things that words and etc. were kind of additional sort of things that she's done on the side. But overall, it's very like clean, very simple. And I think this is a good example of how really once you get some of those building blocks into place, you can just kind of dump them in your website and just keep adding as you go, keep pointing people back in that direction, and even link to your social media if that's something that's important to you. Another example of an artist is an artist website, Genevieve Gagnard. I liked this one in particular. This is the entire homepage, which I thought was really just like very straightforward and to the point. She does a couple different things here. She has her photography work, her mixed media work, installations, and these are all photos of the things that she's doing. The about her, which is essentially a bio, her CV, this is a little bit more of a straightforward CV. So that if you're interested in seeing what that looks like, you can look there. And then the different ways to get in touch. She's got information about her galleries, about the people that she's working with. And it's very specific. Like if you need X, contact Y. If you need A, contact B, so on and so forth. So it's very straightforward and easy to use. And then there's really lovely photos of her and her work throughout. They kind of, I shouldn't say kind of, they do take the center stage of the website, which I think is beautiful. Like looking at this homepage, the 7/8 of the homepage is her work, really displayed in a really lovely manner, and then the rest is just other eighth is very straightforward. And then when you click into photography, mixed media, and installation, it's kind of the same way. So it's almost like the work is speaking for itself a little bit. Okay, questions about that before I move forward? Okay. So how does this translate to social media? One of the things that I, again, want to double down on is this idea that once you've got, and if you already have all of these things, that's fantastic. Once you've got all of those like bits and pieces that I mentioned at the very beginning, you can plug and chug all of them into a variety of spaces, and that also includes social media. I would love to stop here for a second and take a quick poll, and just see who's using what platforms. If I don't know how to do this in a concise manner. If you could just put in the chat like the social media platforms that you're already using. I think that's sufficient. Maybe just drop in the chat. Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Are you on TikTok? Do you have a LinkedIn? Okay. Andrea's on, okay. Okay, Twitter is in the mix. Okay. So a good little mix there. Instagram, YouTube. Okay. So it's Karthika's on LinkedIn. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. What is Shalise, if you don't mind unmuting, what is academia specific sites? What do you mean by that?
Got it. Yeah, like posting your research. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So I think one of the things that's really important to think about is your definition of success. Some of you may have been in the last session where I talked about this a little bit, but I think it's really important. So I'm gonna say it again. You decide what success looks like on social media, but that doesn't mean that you don't need a strategy. So when you're thinking about what it is that you what your purpose is on all of these networks and what you hope to get out of them, it's up to you to kind of figure that out and decide what it is. But there are 3 big buckets. One is awareness. If you want people to be aware of your work, you want to make what you're doing reach people. You want to focus on creating content that's likely to be favored by the algorithm. This is something that changes from time to time, in particular with TikTok, and to some extent, I think people are still on Snapchat. Video has become major. So all of the like bigger platforms like Facebook and Instagram, or older platforms, are racing to catch up, and prioritizing video over other things. So if you want to do well with the algorithm, you should think about things like video. So if you're a visual artist, it could be your process, it could be behind the scenes. If you're a musician, your music or performance is obviously a big thing. That doesn't mean that you should just stop posting photos altogether. But video is really important. Reels, experimenting with reels, and that type of thing on Facebook, on Instagram, can go further, can go far. It doesn't have to be perfect. I see a lot of people in my own personal social media who are just experimenting with reels, and they let that be known, like, I'm just trying this out, I just want to see how it works. I follow someone who routinely gives people feedback on their reels. She works for Instagram, and she does a little series from time to time where she will quote unquote review reels. So just all of this is to say that video is really important if that's your goal. Creating connections with the people that you follow could be another goal for you. Reaching out to people, responding to comments and direct messages then become really important. Asking people questions in your captions. Actively liking and commenting on other people's posts is also a really big way to foster that sense of connection. So you're not just waiting for someone to engage with your content, but you are also actively engaging with other people's, actively liking things and commenting and sharing. That goes a long way. If you're interested in gaining more followers, then I think that a combination of the first two is really important. So you want your existing followers to already be engaged with your content, and you want to be tapped in to what people are really interested in, what you're doing that's really resonating with people, in order to gain more followers. I think especially with the video and with explore pages and for you pages on TikTok, a lot more people are being fed content that they didn't necessarily sign up to see. I look on my own Instagram and it's routinely a mix of people that I'm not following, but they've posted something that has gone viral or whatever. So it's really, if you want to gain more followers, it's really important to have those two pieces of the puzzle intact. You want to already be engaging with your followers, so that there's something there for people to latch onto, but you also want to be aware of the algorithm and what's going to be most likely to get shared through explore pages, through for you pages, etc. If you are, once you've got some of that content in place, there are a number of different uses that you can use it for. If you have a business page on Facebook, you can obviously plug in a lot of that information there and keep that running, with things like headshots and bios and examples of your work and links to media coverage and that sort of thing. Will all do well on Facebook. Similarly with LinkedIn, although LinkedIn is a little bit more of a professional, has more of a professional feel. I think I'm really curious to know, someone said that they were using Twitter, which is not something that I personally struggle with Twitter. I have a very strong need to like see it all, and I feel like if you get off of Twitter for an hour and then you come back, there's 1,000 new tweets that weren't there before, and while people are continually posting. So have a little, it gives me a little stress, but I would be curious to know how people are engaging with Twitter and how that's working for them. TikTok and sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think, am I right that Craig, I think you were the only one who said that you're using Twitter. Oh no, Sean Fitzgibbon as well. So yeah, if you guys want to share in the chat how Twitter's working out for you, I'd be curious too. Sorry, Brittany, keep
You're
on.
fine. No, that's great. I should have explicitly said, like, put it in the chat, because I am curious. And then Instagram and TikTok are, of course, just along with Facebook, major. I know that they're on TikTok, there are a lot more people viewing TikToks than creating content at this point. I think that if you are, I think that people tend to be a little bit concerned about TikTok because it seems intimidating, or it can seem intimidating. There are some people on there who are doing really, really amazing, professional, like sleek looking stuff. I will say that at this point in time, only like I think it's like 11% of people are using TikTok for anything other than like enjoyment. People aren't really like basing decisions about where to spend their money or where to go or anything like that. Or it hasn't, I guess the best, most succinct way to put it is that it hasn't yet risen to a place of Facebook and Instagram where people are really basing like what they should do this weekend, where they should go, what they should see, in the same way that they are with like Facebook events, with Instagram pages, with that sort of thing. So if you're nervous about TikTok, I think that that's okay. I think that the bottom line for all of these is to do what you feel comfortable with, and go where you feel like you can be consistent, because that is what's going to make the difference.
Being recorded.
If you can really own Twitter, then make that work for you. That's fantastic. If you feel like it's not for you and you really want to stick to Instagram, great. Like, own that, do that, be consistent with it. You don't have to be on all of these platforms to be successful. I want to provide a few apps and tools if you are not currently using these, and you're looking, to level up some of your posts, some of what you're able to do. The Adobe suite in particular has a really great set of like app-based, or I'm sorry, iPhone and Android-based apps that you can use. You don't have to be on your computer anymore. Adobe products have, a long history of being really popular and really helpful. So that's something, if you're not using that on your phone. I have a couple of close friends who are content creators who are exclusively iPhone based, and they use Adobe Suite on their phone with no problem. So that's an option if that's something that you're interested in or curious about. These other ones, some of them have a cost, some of them don't. Canva has a free version. We use Canva at Cash. It's really simple, really easy to use. The graphics for this whole series came from Canva. So I think that says a lot about about its effectiveness. Okay.
Hey, Brittany, we've got a question. We've got a question from Julie.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know if you can unmute if you want to ask your question. Otherwise, I'll just read it out. Yeah, I gotcha. She asked, what do you think about ad campaigns? So when we were talking about the different platforms available, or are you going to get into ad campaigns on those platforms at all in your talk today?
We can go back and talk about ads, right? Do you Julie, are you have you been trying ads? Are you interested in any one particular platform? And you can just use the chat if you want. Facebook. Okay. So I think ad campaigns, Facebook's ad suite has gotten really, really good about audience outreach. I would say that in order for the ad to be successful,
being recorded.
Sorry. Oh,
just background.
Okay. I do think that all of the other sort of building blocks have to be there. The ads are not that expensive. You can kind of customize and create how much based on how much you want to spend, which is really nice. But I haven't heard of anyone who like just swears by them. I think that they're helpful, but I wouldn't base my whole strategy around them. I do like that you can determine how much you want to spend and that it kind of tells you what's possible. And then it does allow you, depending on what your goal is, it'll help you determine what kind of ad you need to run and for how long. So it could just be like we did an ad, for example, for this week. And I said specifically that I wanted broad awareness of this week of sessions. I still, at the end of the week, I'll probably go back in and look at how they did, but I think it just depends on what your goal is and what you're trying to do. I don't know.
I'm curious. I just looking at Craig's comment. Craig, do you feel like, are you using Twitter to find out about other people's events, like other artists specifically in Northwest Arkansas or nationally?
No, I use it more nationally.
Sorry, you're kind of breaking up, Craig.
Sorry.
Well, you can answer in the chat. Sorry that that's not working for you. Yeah, honestly, I'm not used to Twitter at all, honestly. So I don't think about events on Twitter. So that's interesting.
When in the past, when I've used Twitter, I've used it primarily for news, like to keep up with what's going on. And that might be why I ultimately had to get off, because I felt like there was always some news story breaking or something that I was missing. It's interesting to think that people are using it to share events. And I'm very curious about how, apart from, unless it's like a major, like a MoMA or something where there's an active audience, like how people are working with the algorithm to make sure that what they're posting gets seen. That I'm super curious about that. I also retweet when someone posts about my work. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Are there other questions about platforms, about resources? I want to make sure, I'm going to re-emphasize, I should say, that all of this is very much reshareable, reusable content. I think I'm going to stop sharing for a second so we can all look at each other. I think once you've got those building blocks in place, you can really take them far. I know there was a session on Monday, I believe, about how to write artist statements and bios. So if you don't have that, I would probably start there.
And I put a couple resources in the chat earlier from Creative Capital and Springboard for the Arts that can be really helpful guides as well when thinking about how to write those things and just how to freshen them up too. It's just a good, it's good to check in and make sure, like Brittany, like you were saying, to be adding to it and making sure that it's relevant. Hey, I've got a question in the chat, Brittany, about just with social media. I know it depends, I'm assuming it depends per platform, but the question is just how often should I post as an artist?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that consistency is the most important thing. If you are only able to post a couple times a week, then that's fine. I think people will tell you that you need to post every day across multiple platforms to have a successful social media strategy. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. If you can't do that, or if your schedule doesn't allow for that, that's okay. I just would say that you need to be consistent. If you can only do a couple times a week, that's fine. Just make sure that you're at least doing that. I think what's really frowned upon is when you go, when someone looks at your Instagram, for example, and you haven't posted since 2016, like that's probably when you might want to evaluate whether this channel is working for you, how you can use it. And if the answer is that you don't need to have it anymore, then that's fine, because clearly it's not something that you actively need, and that's okay.
What other questions do we have? Like, just thinking about the press kit and how to update it, where to start. I mean, it can be daunting if you haven't started it, but even for somebody, I think Jeffrey and Craig, you said you both have press kits. What questions do you have about updating it, and how to use it best? You know, how to wield that press kit? Feel free to put in the chat or DM me if you'd rather. Okay, I've got one. What if I feel like I don't need a website or don't want a website?
Then I would say that you need one. I think that a website makes it really easy for people to find information, in particular, like organizations that you're going to work with, people who are going to need or want to see your CV or your bio. They're going to want to see what's been written about you. I think the two websites that I shared are really great examples of how you can have a really lovely, useful website without too much effort. I think it gets really complicated when when an artist or a gallery or too much money is trying to get information from you, and you have this like long email thread because they ask for this and then they ask for that and then they're looking for this and you have to dig up that. A website is a really simple place to send people. But if you're not going to, a lot of this is so kind of, I almost feel like I'm being really wishy-washy or vague. And I don't mean to be, but I think that the bottom line is that if you're not going to do it well, you shouldn't do it, because it's almost worse to have people looking up information and then see that what they need isn't there, so they've wasted their time, and you are wasting your own money and buying a domain and having this website. If you aren't interested in doing it and you're not going to be able to do it or put in the time to keep it up, then don't. Yeah.
Seeing Craig's comment too about, keeping it updated. I liked the example that you gave earlier, Brittany, where it was a lot of images that speak for itself. And so, Craig, it could be links to your music and sound, and it could be an extremely simple thing that's easy to keep up, but directs people to the platforms where you do keep keep things up. So even if it's just like, this is just a repository of showing I am on Twitter, I am on Facebook, and here's how to find me. Oh, also here's something really incredible for you to listen to. But I hear you. If there's a lot of words and a lot of things to keep updated, yeah, that's maybe not worth it. Let's see, Alyssa says, I just want to add one thing about some success from what I've seen among other ceramic artists. It's sort of a niche market as a maker, but if you look at accounts like Florian Gatsby on Instagram, he goes into super detail and always answers questions to kind of loop everyone into the process. I know quite a few folks who aren't ceramic artists, but have an interest in it from being able to see so much of that background. All that being said, it's a lot of work to go through and explain that much information, but it's not always going to be feasible. But it is possible to get a large audience and buyers that aren't involved in that kind of work themselves. Yeah, that's a great point. And kind of like Brittany, what you were talking about with the rise of video, of the use of the results, the ROI from people seeing your process. So even if it's not being written, maybe there's a system that works for you to show how, you know, a time lapse of how you do your work, especially if it's visual art, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Paul, did you build it using a template? I'm looking at your comment here about having just built a website.
Trying to come on video. Yeah, I did. I used Wix.
Wix.
They had a number of templates for, you know, just about any creative activity you can think of. And they're very easy. It's just a drag and drop interface. So you don't really have to know about coding. If you do know some coding, it would help if you wanted to, you know, tweak it a little bit. But the upfront time was considerable. It took me a week to really fine tune it and get everything in the way I wanted. And I still wasn't quite, you know, absolutely ready when I launched, but, you know, I've always launch websites before they're absolutely ready, because then somebody will come in and say, oh, you've got 2 periods here. So you've seen it so many times by the time you're ready to launch that those 2 periods do not resonate with you whatsoever. You are now so past that. But it was a great exercise. One, it makes you look at your work and really start to choose what is your best representation out in the world. 2, you have to think about how to succinctly describe what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing is you can, like, it's just like Brittany said, you get all of your contact information in one place. You have links to all your social, you have links to your email, you have links to all your accounts, and you just now have one address you send everyone to. And the first thing you do is you give them a great image. If you're a visual artist, you give them a great podcast. If you're into making podcasts, you give them a great little piece of written work if you're a writer, and they start to come. It's a bit amazing how many people have started to come and visit. I mean, I looked at my analytics, and there's across the country now people have come out because I've started to use it. When I post on social, I just say, you know, find out more at paulstolt.com. And I would strongly encourage anyone who has an interest in building an online reputation to just start with the website and then use it with your social. You know, it just makes it easier for people to find you and find out who you are and what your why is.
One thing I'll also add quickly is that you don't have to, if this feels like a lot and it feels like it's stressful, in the same way that a lot of the written work, your bio, your CV, all of that is recyclable, so are images, honestly. You know, if you have 17 images from one installation, you can rotate those all the time, as long as you know, there's something, as if you have a new take on it or you have something new to say or share. Elisa's comment about Alyssa, I'm sorry, her comment about ceramicists made me think of a woman that I follow. Her name is Lolly Ceramics or that's her Instagram handle. And I have seen, I've been looking at what I am sure is the same mug for years. I think it's beautiful. And I know that she has a lot of other work and other things that she's got on sale, but she's still posting, you know, different shots, different backgrounds, different like little tweaks she's done, if the colors changed, if she's experimenting with a new process or something. But ultimately it's very similar content from day to day. I follow a content creator who she's really active on Instagram stories. She starts every day with a photo of her cat. And it's great. The cat is not ever really doing anything amazing or exciting. It's usually just lounging, but like, that's fine. So you don't have to feel like you need to be coming up with the world's greatest content every single time. Yeah. Are there any other questions or anything that you guys want to talk about? I want to make sure that this is helpful.
I just have to put that example in the chat that you just gave, Brittany, because I just looked and it really is the same mug over and over and over again.
And it's a great mug. I think it's really pretty, but
Just a great example of like reusing what you have in creative ways. It doesn't have to be something earth-shattering each time. So, well, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so I think everyone's been just filled up to the brim this afternoon with good things to think about. Thanks everybody for all your contributions and questions today. And what do we have to look forward to tomorrow, Brittany?
Tomorrow is actually the end of our communications week. We are wrapping up with 2 sessions. I believe that they are both specifically about creative businesses. We'll hear artists are welcome,
yeah.
Especially if you are curious about how to run your business, how to make sales, etc. We'll hear from Startup Junkie, and we will hear from TC Screen Printing, and I'm forgetting Pink House Alchemy. So I'm really excited about that. If you're able to join us, please come. Before we leave, I do want to take a minute to plug a couple of our channels as usual. So we have the Arkansas Creative Calendar, Community Calendar, and the directory on the Cache website. If you have performances, exhibitions, etc. coming up that you want to share with the community, please consider the calendar a resource. If you are an artist and you want to make yourself available on the directory, or if you're looking for someone, if you need a photographer, if you need a graphic designer, if you need a band to play at an event that you're hosting, the directory is your one-stop shop for that specifically. The directory is, I will say, under construction. We heard you guys when you said that it was a little too clunky to use, so we are revamping that and it will be back online shortly, but we do want to make sure you know it's available. The Cache newsletter, I send the Cache newsletter out every couple of weeks, and I am constantly going back to the calendar to find events and activities that are going on in the community that I can shout out, that I can share with our circle. So if you use the calendar, I'll definitely be seeing things. We also have, sorry, I just like passed up that slide. Nope. Okay. Sorry. We also have more year of learning and outreach engagement opportunities on our website. If you are looking for ways to get involved, this or to continue learning, continue expanding your community, this series continues all year long. It's not just Communications Week. That's simply one part of YOLO, as we've been calling it. So keep an eye on our website for upcoming opportunities to get involved.